Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to my spoiler review for Matt Reeves' The Batman. Now, if you haven't seen this movie already, I highly suggest you guys click away. We are going to get into a full breakdown of the entire plot, and we're going to be discussing all of the Easter eggs and cameos that we got in the film. If you guys are new to my channel and you've never clicked on me before, I would like to say hi. I do movie reactions. If you feel interested in that kind of stuff, please feel free to hit the subscribe button. I promise it's free and you'll have a lot of fun. I just wanted to quickly jump into the thing that made me the most excited about any potential The Batman sequel to come, and that is the appearance of the Joker in Arkham Asylum. As you guys know, I really adored the Eternals, and one of my favorite characters from that movie was Druig, so you guys should have seen the shock and awe in my face when I saw him appear. My entire audience was living because everybody understood exactly who was coming on screen when we saw him. He is an Arkham patient who meets with the Riddler after he is taken down by the Batman and arrested. The Joker here looks very different to all of the other Joker iterations, and I think that's because they are going for a more realistic version of the Joker. This man was literally dumped into a pot of acid. Realistically, his face would be very distorted, and that's why, to me, he looks really menacing in the film. He has a conversation with the Riddler in which he speaks to him in riddles just as the Riddler did, and they become friends. This is very important because I feel that if they wanted to ever do a sequel, the Joker and the Riddler could be working together, because I truly feel that the Riddler is not done with his work. He was a phenomenal villain. Obviously, he will never ever get to the level that Heath Ledger was as the Joker in The Dark Knight, while they did try to imitate some things that the Joker did, especially when it comes to all of the video messages online, spreading them to the news. The Riddler did have a sense of terror and a sense of a motivation that really chilled me to the bone, and I feel worked very well. I think that the inclusion of the Joker in this universe is very exciting, and I really hope that Matt Reeves goes along and does this sequel. I hope that Warner Brothers backs him, and I really hope that this movie does well in the box office so we can get a sequel to this absolute masterpiece. Moving on to the plot breakdown, we're going to go in depth with this, so bear with me. On Halloween, Gotham City Mayor Don Mitchell Jr. is murdered by a serial killer who calls himself the Riddler. This scene is absolutely terrifying in the film because the movie offers a much more violent take on Gotham City. The movie suddenly shifts to a narration of Bruce Wayne narrating what's going on in Gotham City and talking about how he lives in the shadows and he uses the shadows to ensue fear in all of the criminals of Gotham City. They never know where he is or where he could be, so him just lighting up the bat signal shows them that he is around and he's watching them. This opening sequence really helped me understand how scary Batman can truly be, no matter who the person behind him actually is. Moving on, Lieutenant James Gordon discovers that the Riddler left a message for the Batman. The GCPD Commissioner Pete Savage berates him for allowing a vigilante to enter the crime scene, and he forces Batman to leave. This is really important because the movie takes an entire arc showing you how the Batman is seen as a vigilante and then will soon become the hero. Unfortunately, to Savage's dismay, the Riddler kills Savage and leaves another message for the Batman using these letters, which I find really interesting. These letters are really childish, but they have a really dark and depressing atmosphere about them. I thought that worked very well, and I love the way this movie is presented as a mystery. In another sequence I thought was really cool, Batman and Gordon discovered that the Riddler left a thumb drive in Mitchell's car. Behind everyone's knowledge, the mayor of Gotham was cheating on his wife with a woman named Amika at the Iceberg Lounge, a nightclub operated by the mobster Carmine Falcone's Lieutenant Penguin. Batman questions the Penguin, who claims to know nothing, but notices that Selina Kyle, Anika's roommate and girlfriend, works there as a waitress. He follows Selina to Mitchell's house, where they then discover Anika's passport in a safe. When Anika disappears, Batman sends Selina back to the Iceberg Lounge to search for answers. This is one of my favorite sequences in the entire film because it's where you see Batman and Selina, Catwoman, really start to form this bond where they work well together. It was a really cool undercover scene. The reason the scene worked for me is because there was so much tension built around Selina, because you already formed a bond with her as you realize that this poor woman is under a lot of pressure. Her rent is due, she's low low on money. This woman is really struggling, and I think that's one of my favorite aspects of Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman. When you compare her Catwoman to other Catwomen that we've seen before, particularly Michelle Pfeiffer and Anne Hathaway, both actresses gave amazing performances in different ways. Anne Hathaway's was a little rough, while Michelle Pfeiffer's was very sexualized. Catwoman here, on the other hand, played by the amazing, stellar Zoe Kravitz, gives us a performance that is so nuanced with so much vulnerability that you really root for her and understand her pain and her suffering. Now, of course, a twist that gets revealed to casual Batman viewers in this movie is that Selina Kyle is actually the daughter of Carmine Falcone. If you know any of the Batman comics, this would not be coming as a surprise to you, but it was kind of nice hearing my theater gasp with casual viewers who maybe are not aware of the Batman franchise. Continuing on with the plot, the Riddler abducts Coulson, straps a time bomb to his neck, and sends him off to interrupt Mitchell's funeral. This is a really depressing scene because you can really tell how Bruce is relating to this little kid who just lost his father and is now officially an orphan, and the Riddler does not stop there. He literally crashes a car into the scene of the crime, destroys this entire funeral, and straps a bomb onto the driver. When Batman arrives at the scene, the Riddler calls him via Coulson's phone and threatens to detonate the bomb if Coulson cannot answer 3 riddles. Batman helps Coulson answer the first 2, but Coulson refuses to answer the third: name the informant who gave the GCPD information that led to a historic drug bust ending the mobster Sal Maroni's operation. This was one of the most shocking moments in the film because you really understand how brutal this movie is going to be when the Riddler does not let go of his promise and blows up this guy. The scene was absolutely bombastic. My jaw was on the floor, and I feel they did a really great job with it. Batman and Gordon then deduce that the informant may be the Penguin and track him to a drug deal. This is one of the funniest and most entertaining scenes in the entire film, because while a huge car chase ensues, he eventually catches the Penguin, and him and Gordon take turns interrogating this man. And when I tell you Colin Farrell is an absolute legend for the way he played the Penguin, he was so hilarious. But right before that, Selina inadvertently exposes them when she arrives to steal money. As the Penguin flees, Selina discovers Anika's corpse in a car trunk. After Batman and Gordon realize that the Penguin was not in fact the informant, they follow the Riddler's trail to the ruins of an orphanage operated by Bruce's parents, Thomas and Martha. They learn that the Riddler was a resident at the orphanage and holds a grudge against Thomas. As Thomas is dead, he has decided to target Bruce instead of him. When Bruce realizes that he is in fact the target, he decides to go back home because Alfred is at home, and the most heartbreaking scene in the entire movie takes place. My jaw was on the floor when Alfred receives a letter from the Riddler. Obviously, it's directed to Batman, but inadvertently, Alfred opens it and gets blown up. I thought Alfred died. Thank goodness the man was okay. He was just sent to a hospital. The Riddler then leaks evidence alleging that Thomas Wayne, who was running for mayor when he was murdered, hired Falcone to kill a journalist for threatening to reveal embarrassing details about Martha's history of mental illness. This was another twist in the film that I thought worked really well, because with all of the previous Batman movies that we've seen, Martha and Thomas were both viewed as very well put together people. I think it's a really good commentary on how mental illness was shunned back in the day. I really hope that we can move forward and become a more positive society where we can speak about mental health openly and honestly and have positive conversations about it. Now, of course, Bruce, who grew up believing that his father was morally upstanding, confronts Alfred, and the scene is absolutely heartbreaking because until then, you have only seen Bruce be a little callous to Alfred, telling him things like he's not his father and asking him why his father gave him Wayne cufflinks because he is not a Wayne. I personally found those scenes very offensive because I am an Alfred supporter. We do not bash Alfred in this household. But then Alfred and Bruce have a very touching scene where Bruce finally admits and shows real raw emotion, where he says that his entire life he has learned to suppress this feeling of fear until Alfred was almost taken from him and he feared losing him. Oh, Oh man, I'm tearing up, you guys. That was really emotional. After that, Alfred confirms that Thomas Wayne did ask Falcone to intimidate the journalist, but he didn't actually ask him to kill him. He decided to turn Falcone over to the police after learning of the murder, and Alfred assumes that Falcone actually had Thomas and Martha killed to prevent this. Now, Falcone isn't just involved in all of the drama with Catwoman being her father and letting her go at such a young age, but actually that he had Thomas and Martha killed. He is now enemy number one to both our Batman and our Catwoman. Soon after, Selina tells Batman that Falcone is her father and he neglected her. She learns that Falcone strangled Anika, her best friend and girlfriend, after Mitchell told her that he was the informant, and she is out for revenge. Batman and Gordon arrive at the Iceberg Lounge in time to stop her and arrest Falcone in what is a brilliant scene that takes place in a pitch black room when all the lights get cut off and you just see Batman brutally beating these guys. They're shooting him with guns and they still can't get to him. He is a master of the darkness, and I felt that scene worked really, really well. Any Batman fan, I feel, would adore this movie for all of these amazing action sequences. After they arrest Falcone, the Riddler snipes him from a nearby building and actually kills him. Bruce has convinced Selina to let go of all of this hatred and anger, which is really hypocritical of him because that is the anger that he has kept in for so long, and again, really helps understanding his story arc throughout the movie and how he wants to become a better person. Now that Falcone is dead, Batman and Gordon discover that the Riddler is actually an accountant named Edward Nashton, who is then incarcerated in Arkham State Hospital, which leads to an absolutely breathtaking monologue scene between Batman and the Riddler. This scene was so reminiscent of the interrogation in The Dark Knight. It is nowhere near as good as that scene, don't get me wrong, but it was still really haunting to finally understand the Riddler's motive. Nashton says he was so envious of the sympathy that Bruce received after his parents was murdered, while he was ignored and wanted to partner with Batman and become a similarly masked vigilante. The reason I feel the scene worked so well is because the Riddler kept speaking about how everybody focused on Bruce Wayne, who was a rich orphan, as opposed to these kids who are starving. He explained to Batman that he isn't actually an orphan. An orphan is a person who grows up with around 30 other kids living in the same room. Every winter, a child would die because they are freezing. Life is so brutal, and they all envied Bruce Wayne. Batman angrily rejects Nashton and discovers that he has stationed car bombs all around Gotham. There were 7 in particular. Those bombs destroy Gotham's reservoir, and the entire city floods. This is when the third act happens. In the ensuing chaos, Batman and Selina prevent a Riddler-inspired cult from assassinating the mayor-elect Bella Real. It was really haunting seeing a bunch of different Riddlers attacking this place. The Riddler created an army using the internet, which I feel is so haunting to be shown to us in a time like this. And Batman notices this flood. He goes through all this pain. He shoots himself up with adrenaline and goes in on these Riddler lookalikes. We then get this beautiful scene with some of the best cinematography in the entire film, where Bruce helps all of these people try to get out of the water, and it's so moving. The scene is done in slow motion, and you get to see Batman in a really gritty state, just trying to help all of these innocent people get out safely. The entire Gotham City is now officially flooded. People are suffering, and Batman realizes that this city does not need fear, it needs hope. One of the most beautiful messages I had to witness after watching a nearly 3-hour movie that is so dark and so gloomy and so depressing, to end it on such a high note with such a positive message, to really elevate Bruce's entire character arc in this film from going from a person who is so angry, so dark, to someone who actually believes in hope and wants to inspire that in other people. I thought that was brilliant. Unfortunately for Bruce, Selina still doesn't necessarily have hope in Gotham City, and she decides that it's best for her to take off. The movie ends with them riding off in different directions, and Batman looks into the rear view, seeing Selina one last time, and it cuts to credits. I absolutely loved this movie, you guys. I thought this movie was an absolute 10 out of 10. It was a 3-hour movie, and I genuinely felt as if this movie went by so quickly. I had a great time as a Batman fan who only just recently got introduced to the Dark Knight trilogy. This hero means so much to me, and it was so nice seeing Bruce Wayne in a state where he's still new. He hasn't figured everything out yet, and that is something I can relate to as a 21-year-old. I've still got a whole life to live, inshallah, and I haven't figured myself out fully, and neither has Bruce Wayne. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I really hope you guys stuck around. I really hope I did a good job. I've never really done an ending explained video before. This is just a movie that I really loved, and instead of doing a spoiler review, I just kind of wanted to talk about the entire plot where I can discuss every little detail that I loved. Thank you all so much for watching. I love you all. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so, and I'll see you guys next time.